Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the October 11th meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please take a moment of silence, and as we do so, please remember the people of Israel. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to begin with the roll call, beginning with myself. I am here. Commissioner Doug Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Mike Stevens.
Here.
Commissioner Jeff Culberson.
Here.
Commissioner Mike Smith.
Here.
We are all present and accounted for. Public comment. I have Joe Herring. Public comment today regarding the work session. On up.
Morning, Commissioner.
Morning, Joe.
For the work session today, and it is apparently following the BOCC meeting. That wasn't too clear, but we did figure that out, that we're having it this morning. I did get confirmation on what it was on, because I wasn't sure if we were talking about the rezone that was possibly going back to be reconsidered. But it's on the development plan for developments that will be with interior roads and items like that, a plan that has come up from staff that I was explaining to you that it was going to be presented to you and then taken to the planning commission for a public hearing for that process possibly be approved. And as long as that's the case that it's going to go through that route with the consensus of the board, that is what developers want the chance to look at this, to be able to see what the process is, to be able to weigh in on certain items, maybe come up with some good ideas and add to it. So that was my comment on that. So look forward to that work session, and hopefully that process that they will present will make it to the planning commission so everybody can discuss it.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. And I'm going to go ahead and allow Councilman Gene Kirby to come up as out of respect rather than having him have to wait till the end of the meeting today because he would like to say something about... Oh, I'm sorry. Then you can sit back down and we'll let you wait till the end of the
meeting. Good morning, everyone. Gene Kirby, 604 East Beth, Lansing, Kansas. And I am here today not to complain or to tell you how to do your job. I want to say thank you for the vaccination clinic last week at the Council on Aging. The clinic was very well organized and run. Tables, chairs, paperwork, pens, were all set up and provided for everyone to use. Once you filled out the paperwork, someone would come back by and check to be sure that everything was correct. Drinks and snacks were provided. At some point, the line to receive your vaccine became long, and those in charge saw the issue and addressed it immediately. Chairs were added so that the line so that everyone could sit while waiting. We're down that long, and we're wall to wall facing each other. We actually joked about putting our chairs back to back and playing musical chairs while we waited. I was surprised to find out multiple vaccines were available, allowing those in attendance to get what they needed at one time. There was always someone checking to see if anyone needed anything. I know that budgeting is always a major concern for local governments. With that said, many of our seniors who have paid their dues are in need of critical services. Please keep in mind that a fixed income is not the same for everyone. Many of our seniors are our most vulnerable and need our help. So once again, thanks for allowing this to happen. When I got done, because the guy from Walgreens asked me how long it took, and I looked at my phone and said, well, but I suspected that if I was at my doctor's office, I would still be waiting to have my name called. So, thanks to everybody. Please pass that along.
Thank you.
For allowing me to have it.
Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. No other public comments, so we'll move on to administrative business. We'll begin with the, I'll go ahead and let Mr. Lothry if he has anything, and then we'll move on to Commissioner Culbertson. But
No, just the LED.
just him? Okay. Jeff?
Showtime.
Okay. So we put together a letter. We are thinking about putting in the tax statement that goes out to all the taxpayers. And so it's kind of a summation of what we've been working on for the last 4 years with this LAVTR. So I'll just read you the letter. It's only one page. I try to get it as brief as possible because I know people don't want to spend a lot of time reading, so we'll make it as short as possible. Local ad valorem tax reduction. If only we had some way to lower property tax in Kansas. Well, instead of trying to figure out a new plan to do so, why not use the Kansas statute already on the books? KSA 792959 has already been passed in the law books that does just that. It's called a Local Ad Valorem Tax Reduction Fund, or LAVTR. It uses some of the sales tax money to offset property taxes. The problem is in 2003, the state needed money, so they decided to keep our LAVTR funds for themselves. By doing so, they're not following the law. To get around that, they pass a moratorium on funding the LAVTR every other year. So they basically pass a law saying they don't have to follow the law. In 1965, state legislators and local governments saw the burden on property taxes was too high. People's property taxes are going up and up to try to fund all the necessary services and assets provided by local governments. They came up with an agreement that the state would return part of the sales tax money generated back to the cities and the counties to be used to offset high property taxes. Leavenworth County alone should be receiving about $4 million in the LAVTR funds each year to lower your property taxes, but we haven't received any of that money since 2003. Leavenworth County is particularly burdened with high property taxes because the state mandates that the cities and counties use property taxes, not sales tax or income tax, to fund our budgets. Leavenworth County has more than 35% of our total valuation exempt from property taxes due to Fort Leavenworth federal and state prisons, churches, and schools. About $3 billion in valuation on Fort Leavenworth alone pays no property taxes. This means the other 65% of us have to make up that 35% not paying. Only 33,000 parcel owners pay property tax, so a few pay a lot. Sales tax is paid by hundreds of thousands of people, so a lot of people pay a little. The idea of LAVTR is a lot more people help pay the bills. LAVTR would not mean a sales tax increase. It would be returning the sales tax we already pay. About 5 years ago, the present Leavenworth County Commission brought this problem front and center to Topeka. We put together all the requests and memos from hundreds of cities and counties across the state that have been presented to Topeka over the last 20 years, begging the state to return our LAVTR funds. Most legislators, if not all, had no idea what we were even talking about because most were not present when it was canceled. We've been spending the last couple years educating them on this issue. The latest development on getting Topeka to understand is we have the Kansas Association of Counties presenting an educational forum about LAVTR. KAC put together a 3-part public announcement packet and have assembled several informational documents available to all. Any taxpayer can go to the KAC website and easily access all they need to know about LAVTR. Some of our legislators have been cooperative about working on a solution. Some have not. Why? The short answer we are told is they don't have the money. The reason this makes no sense is because it's not their money, it's our money to begin with. We collect it for them, we give it to them, and then they're supposed to calculate who gets how much, 65% based on population per district and 35% based on valuations. They simply don't give it back to us. Make no mistake, this is not a new additional added tax. This tax is already collected from you. It's just not coming back to you like it's supposed to. Your legislators work for you. This has to be fixed in Topeka, not locally by the city or county.
Pat Proctor, Dave Beeler, Tim Johnson, Lance Neely, Tom Holland, and Jeff Pittman need to hear from you that you want the LAVTR funds restored. Everyone that pays property tax should be talking to their state representatives about this. This will not completely fix the high property tax problem in Kansas all by itself, but it will drastically help right now and provide some relief until the big problem can be worked out. The best thing about this is it's already the law. They just need to follow it. So what we were thinking is put that in the tax bills to every taxpayer,
I think
because
that's
there's still a
That's a
lot
great
of people
idea.
that don't
Yeah,
know
no.
what
Can
this
we do
is.
that, though? I mean,
Are we allowed to?
okay to do that?
Yeah, we've done it with other informational
Yeah,
packets.
you-
So.
Prior to putting it in the envelope, I'll give you a final opinion. My initial opinion is that you're not advocating for or against a ballot question.
Well, it's not a ballot question.
Consequently, I think it could be viewed as
It could turn into a ballot question.
Yeah.
It's just educational.
which is
Informational,
what our
yeah.
final is.
Yeah. It'd be good if we could.
It could affect ballot results.
Well,
Because
Advocates for or against an existing ballot question.
the point is, 4 years ago, when we would mention LAVTR to anybody, nobody knew what we were even talking
They weren't
about.
around when this happened.
So we're just trying to educate everybody on what.
Well, the
Old
legislators,
people up here that remember it.
the legislators know now. They have known the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's gotten out there.
They're very clear. Either they stand for or they don't, and we've seen a little of both.
Now, is this the county city revenue sharing law still on the books? The one they did in 1978?
I'm not aware of it being repealed, Commissioner. I'd have to check.
So we should be getting some of that money too.
Demand transfers, and there's
Yeah.
also,
Yeah.
there's 3.
Commissioner, now that you mentioned, yes, it is still on the books, and it is in a similar position as the LADT.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's 3 of them.
Yeah.
Similar, huh?
Well, in that the money is not arriving at your books.
That's similar.
So-
So that law is also not being followed.
The law has been amended by the state legislature to basically make it ineffective.
So do I have a consensus from the
I
board
think
to make
that's
this?
something we need to do.
Absolutely, if we can legally
Available
stuff
in
the
that.
envelopes.
Okay.
We may have to help downstairs to do it.
We can do that.
Just one little change, if you don't mind. On the last paragraph, when you address the legislators, could we just add in front of Pat Proctor, representatives, Pat Proctor, David Beeler, Tim Johnson, Lance Neely, and then after that, and senators, Tom Holland and Jeff
Yeah, that's a
Pittman?
good point.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Thank you.
But I like it, Jeff.
We'll change that. And I added the sentence that you guys don't have a
Yeah,
copy of.
yeah.
Make no mistake, this is not a new additional added tax.
Yeah.
This tax is already collected.
I saw that.
All right. That's all I got.
Okay. Does anyone have anything else for administrative business today?
I don't.
If not, we can move forward, and I will entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I make a motion we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Begin voting with myself. Aye.
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 Aye. I'm sorry.
Motion carries.
I
Okay.
did want to remind on the consent or on the administrative that Fairmount Road is open.
Oh, yeah.
Looks nice. Job well done. Looks like it's ahead of schedule, I believe. So,
Does look good.
Yeah.
Good.
Well done. Okay.
One down, 140.
Okay, Mr. That's empty.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, formal board action. We need to consider a motion to approve a contract with Finney and Turnseed for the 2024 biennial bridge inspection in the amount of $41,400. Good morning.
Morning. Commissioners, today for your consideration is the 2024 bridge inspection contract. We did advertise for several weeks and reach out to a number of firms to solicit for proposals. We did only receive one proposal back. I did reach out again to a couple of the firms that I thought might submit proposals and was told by many of them that they won't bid work. We were asking for a price proposal to be included in the This is a state mandate, unfunded state mandate, to complete these bridge inspections biannually.
What'd you call it?
An unfunded state mandate.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
Okay. So they have the proposed cost is $41,400 that we did receive in the interim seed. In 2022, we received 3 costs. This would have been the low cost, including the interim seed. It's actually $2,000 lower than what they put together for a fee package in 2022, the first year here. The other 2 that we did receive in 2022 were $68,400 and $87,120. Considering the inflation that we've seen over the past several years, to be able to complete this work with a reputable quality firm who's doing a very good job for us in the past at a reduced cost, it would be our recommendation that we approve the contract.
Any questions for?
Do we have to inspect like the bridges that are just being built?
We don't necessarily inspect them, but we do get a load rating summary sheet, and then I do submit that to our inspection firm, and they put that information into the bridge portal. I believe they assign a new MBI number. So there is some inspection work done by that. It's post-date entry that's done, generally by the inspection firm, but they don't actually go out and do the inspection until the first cycle is complete. So like the 2 that just opened,
Won't have to be
they're not-
inspected.
They won't be inspected. So.
Commissioners, I think Bill had brought up that some of the firms don't like to provide the cost when they provide the proposals. It's because when you do professional services, it's not required that we solicit for the cost and the qualifications. But I think when we are doing projects like this that we know specifically what the project is, it's important that we know the cost up front as well. And I think the last time we did this, a good reason would be that some of those costs were twice as high. This is a very good firm. In fact, they helped us get some of the bridges that had been evaluated by our previous company.
Yeah.
They helped us reevaluate those to be eligible.
I remember, yeah.
Because they were misgraded. So
Yep.
when we have some things we bring forward that are just proposals for qualifications, it's because it's an unknown. We don't know what the total cost would be because it's not a quantity. In this case, there's a very specific job that we're asking them to do. We need them to be qualified, and we need to know what the cost is. So we're very happy with this proposal.
Yeah, we don't want to inspect a bridge and then 6 months later close it when it's got a 60% rating or something.
Yeah.
10 more years.
10 more years. Maybe like 10 months.
Yeah.
No, I think this is a great price. I mean,
Yeah.
and this is one of our cheaper unfunded mandates. So,
Okay, well, I will entertain
I
a
move
motion.
that we approve a contract with Finney Turnip Seed for the 2024 biannual bridge inspections in the amount of $41,400.
Second.
Motion and a second. I'll begin voting with myself. Aye.
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 Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Now we need to,
You had one question before he
Oh,
takes
sure.
off. What's the latest on the County Road 30 and maybe David has some information on this. Have we had any additional contact with the water district, or where are we at?
The relocation agreements for both the County Road 30 project and the County Road 5 projects were sent to the legal counsel and the engineer from Rural Water District number 9 last week. As it was sent last week, we have not received a response back. Given the holiday, I would not have anticipated such a response. I anticipate it will probably need to be brought before the Board of Directors of Rural Water District number 9 prior to your receiving a response. However, the goal is to try to resolve the outstanding issues with respect to both road projects. We think one has been resolved and we believe we're close to resolving the other, to keep these road projects moving forward and not imperil the grant.
Do we need to have a correspondence ready to go indicating that we will proceed with the County Road 30 project?
Well, Commissioner, that message has previously been communicated. It's certainly dependent upon what response we get back and appropriate.
They don't meet till the 17th. Is that right?
I think
We're
we're good where we're at right now.
Are we? Well, I mean, my communication, I just don't want it to get to where we
Well, we're
miss
gonna move forward
the
regardless.
window.
They'll have 3 meetings before we have to bid the project.
Commissioners, I just caveat all of this. You have limited power to direct rural water districts that exist in your county.
And I'm not wanting to direct, but they have limited power to direct the county as well.
But we can continue to move forward with
Yes.
our project.
That's the key.
The
That's,
goal
Yeah.
is to resolve the differences and move forward with the project.
And hopefully they know that's our intent.
It's been communicated.
So, thanks.
Thanks, Bill.
thanks, Bill. Okay, now we need to consider a motion to approve the Community Corrections Fiscal Year 2023 Adult End of the Year Report. Welcome, Jamie.
Good morning, Commissioners. Hopefully you all got a chance to read my report and it didn't print too horribly. Tried to get it all on there in a way that makes sense. This year, our success rate for adult supervision was 67%. In previous years, we were down in the 40%, meaning more than half of people went to PDOC. While we were shy of the state's goal that everyone have 75% success on supervision, I believe that 67% is a great stride, just 21% over in the past 3 years. As the year I started here, we were at 46%. We've steadily been going up. So
What would you credit that to? Why? What's the improvement?
I believe collaboration and identifying areas where we can improve and utilizing evidence-based practices, working more closely with our community treatment provider, the guidance center, collaborating to fill in gaps. Johnson County has been able to, in the past, allow our clients to participate in their cognitive groups virtually while we identified means to provide those ourselves. And hopefully we see this continue to improve because we did just recently have 2 offer letters come back received, and we're now fully staffed, so we should be providing our own on-site cog groups, which, as you know, have a better rate of success than virtual groups. There's just not a lot of research yet on telehealth. So we're hoping providing those on site and having more eyes and ears and additional UAs. We've just really increased our services. And also with new positions in the past, we reduced caseload sizes to where they're closer to being more manageable and following the evidence-based practices.
That's great.
Thank you.
That's a good number increase. That's quite a jump.
We're getting there. Okay, well,
You do a motion?
do a motion.
Motion to approve Community Corrections FY2023 Adult End of Year Report.
Second.
Motion is second. Begin voting with myself. Aye.
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 Motion carries. Okay, now we'll move on down to considering a motion to approve the Community Corrections Fiscal Year 2023 Juvenile End of the Year Report.
Yes, so unfortunately we are pretty stagnant at 40% on the juvenile side. We only discharged 20 youth as opposed to 119 cases on the adult side. Since Senate Bill 367, which really reformed all of the juvenile laws, there are less teeth in community supervision for juveniles. We also have some of the shortest probation term limits in the country. And prior to Senate Bill 367, we had some of the longest. We also had in the top 5 of population of juveniles in placement or incarcerated, and we had very poor outcomes. And when this pendulum swung for 367, it just dramatically decreased not only placement and incarceration, but services. We didn't have a lot of stuff in place to really think about how those policies would have long-term implications, and we're still seeing that. And I think right now our major struggle is with those short-term limits, we have a very limited opportunity to make an impact with kids. And if those values are not reflected in the parents who have a bigger impact, and those families are struggling with drug and alcohol or mental health issues, it's just that much harder to make a difference. And until there is something policy-wise where we can put more of an emphasis on the parental responsibility to ensure that those youth are set up for success at home, it's just going to be hard for those youth to be successful.
Yeah, it sounds nice, but in the long run, it's a bad decision. And you're going to see it and you're going to deal with it.
Yeah.
So actually that bill needs to be tweaked.
I think
Tweaked is kind.
Yeah, I think anytime there's a huge policy shift, if we don't set up the things that are necessary to make sure it's successful, then we're kind of playing catch up. And I think that's what we've been doing with our prevention and our wraparound services that we have established through the Youth Justice Resource Center and in working with USD 453 and other school districts. Had that been in place prior, we would have had that buffer. And we probably could have helped some of those youth before they got to probation. But hopefully, 5 years from now, we do see this impacted, and with, additional supports in the community with the Guidance Center and crisis stabilization and an increase in what they're providing for services as a CCBHC, we'll see, the whole family unit holistically improving together.
Any other questions for Jamie? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the Community Corrections FY 2023 Juvenile End of Year Report.
Second.
Motion and second. Begin voting with myself. Aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you, Jamie. Okay.
One more time.
Let's see. Now we need to consider a motion to approve the Community Corrections 2023 Annual JCAB report, which is the Juvenile Corrections Advisory Board.
Yep.
So each year, by the end of October, we are to collect annual data regarding youth in placement. All of this directly is reported back to the Juvenile Justice Oversight Committee and really identifies what services are available in each community. It identifies trends in each community, and it also allows us an opportunity to advocate for two much-needed services. This year, although this is the first time that we separately submitted our reports, it was conducted in the same manner. We solicited information from court services, members of the previous JCAB, as well as all of our internal data to compile those things, and we continue to ask for transportation and MST and have the funding for those because they were very successful in this community in the past. However, MST, as you can see on the report, is very expensive.
Extremely expensive.
So,
any questions for Jamie? Not, I'll entertain a motion. You want to do it, Doug?
I will. I move that we approve Community Corrections 2023 Annual JCAB report.
Second.
Motion second. I'll begin voting with myself. Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Now we're moving to presentations and discussion items, and we're still with Miss Jamie.
Hopefully you all got an opportunity to look over our Q1 outcomes, which just ended at the end of September. We have achieved so much of what we are setting forth for this year's comp plan and our goals on the adult side. As you know, in the fourth quarter of this year, we will have our quality assurance audit from KDOC. We really set up a lot of the goals of our comp plan around things we know that we need to sharpen, which tools we need to really improve and just master prior to them coming here, and making sure we're using their funding and following standards and utilizing those evidence-based practices and are just good stewards of their funds. So we were really successful in updating some of the policies we needed to, getting observational audits done. We received a lot of information. We did do a massive shift in how we distribute cases on the adult side to really improve services. Previously, we were trying to get all of the caseloads under 35. Unfortunately, if you have a lot of level ones, you're seeing those people 4 times a month. But you could have 35 people on another caseload and they're lower level, so the workload wasn't distributed evenly. So we have worked with other agencies and KDOC to identify other structures and how people were distributing caseloads. We looked at that, completed that along with the audits. We created internal measures. We set up our interview rooms for success. We bought more incentives for the fish bowls to really remind people of their sobriety and goals. Not just like, here's a certificate. We're handing out the little snap bands so that when people feel the urge to relapse or go use an illegal substance, they can snap that on their wrist and use as a reminder to positively disrupt that negative thinking. So we are hammering away at first quarter on the adult side, working really hard to continue to improve that success and hopefully get over the 75% bump this year. We also, as I previously stated, extended an offer to fill the adult COG and juvenile COG positions. And as a result of not utilizing all of the grant funding because of that vacancy on the juvenile, we opted to split the funding for the adult and juveniles to make sure that the state grant funding went farther and we could cross-train. So both of the new people who will be starting in November will actually be dual-trained adult and juvenile, which is great.
That's good.
And on the juvenile side, our main goal for intake was to continue to maintain our #1 ranking in the 99th percentile for our use of the behavioral health tool. We continue to hammer away at that and follow up with families about referrals that are made. And on the juvenile probation side, just still trying to find ways to be creative and trying to get family engagement involved and get the buy-in and work with referring all of those youth and their families to FFT or services that they're eligible to receive.
Questions for Jane?
Y'all really doing a good job. I appreciate everything and direction you've been going the last couple of years. It's going to make a big difference, even though we may have some state laws and things that are hindering us or things we need to tweak. But what I'm seeing and the reports I'm seeing are showing that the progress and what y'all are doing is paying off. But sometimes it takes a while to get there.
Yes, thank you.
I had a couple questions. What would you say is the biggest impediment to providing services that you're facing?
On the adult or juvenile side?
Both sides.
Well, on the adult side, I think it's just the same thing kind of we're all faced with. There are agencies that are able to provide services. We have come up with opportunities where they can come on site, but filling positions and keeping treatment providers in those positions, making sure that we keep our staff and, hold on to people who are passionate about what they do, making sure the caseloads are manageable, and just getting vacancies filled and providing wraparound services. The adults are obviously far better off, although we continue to struggle with behavioral health funding. So I'm hopeful that the opioid settlement funding continues to come in so we can continue to fill that COG position in the future. But I think I can't complain about a barrier when we're solving those barriers right now. It's really just been COG and treatment services and the availability, and we're filling that. Hopefully the Guidance Center can get some of their vacancies filled, but there's just not a lot of people who are available and willing to be treatment providers. I don't know what's going on with that shortage in that labor market, but it seems to be hitting us significantly. And that's also an issue on the juvenile side. There's just limited resources. There's limited access to outpatient juvenile treatment, inpatient treatment services. There's only 2 providers that provide inpatient mental health and substance abuse treatment in the state for juveniles. But really, for the juvenile side, it's truly environmental and that family engagement piece and the amount of time we have with them. I think there are plenty of grants available that we could write, but if we can't fill those positions, and even if we can fund the positions, there are requirements for licensing for behavioral sciences, and it's just hard to get those positions filled out there. And I think that's a huge issue. I also think more collaboration and less duplication of services, but I think a lot of that's about to be solved with concurrent supervision going into effect.
And flipping that on its head, what would you say have been the biggest successes that you've seen in the last 2 years?
What we're doing on the juvenile side with the Youth Justice Resource Center and Leavenworth schools, as well as just truancy in general with the juvenile courts. When I arrived here, there was not an alternative. There was nothing prior to just getting that sync case. There was no prevention. There was no day reporting options. So when youth were suspended or expelled, they were sent home and provided Chromebooks to use to follow up on their education credits at home. But unfortunately, if parents are working, no one is there to make sure that you are doing your schoolwork. So oftentimes when those youth are removed from the school setting, they're dealing with the collateral consequences of being left all day to watch video games, or not have that safety, and sometimes not have the same opportunities for just eating and socializing that they would have gotten at school, or the guidance from counselors and therapists at the schools. And we now are able to, work with the schools to provide that off-site. We're able to help with those parents to alleviate barriers to get the youth to us with our 15-passenger van. So that's a huge success, and just reducing caseloads and the amount of meaningful contact we're spending with our adult offenders. We're really just streamlining that to try to fill gaps where we can and reduce barriers where our grant funding allows us.
Have you seen an increase, or have you seen any kind of impact with Missouri's legalized the recreational marijuana? Have you seen any kind of an increase? Has that impacted your clients?
I can only think of 1 or 2 occasions where it's impacted anything, where people complain, of course, that if they were in Missouri, they could they could use medical marijuana instead of psychotropics that are, pharmaceuticals that can help alleviate some of their mental health issues. And, we use motivational interviewing, and we try to get people to understand that alcohol is legal in this state and you can't drink on probation. And even in Colorado, where marijuana, and other states where marijuana is legal, if you're in a drug court, they don't let you use that. We're using the abstinence model in sobriety and recovery, and it's not just about replacing one substance with another.
Yeah.
You often see that on probation. People will trade in methamphetamines or opiates for alcohol because it's, they believe it's more socially acceptable, and we won't send them to prison for that. But unfortunately, it doesn't actually solve a problem. It just becomes a short-term alternative, just a substitute. But if, they're not free of all of those substances, it just doesn't do anything for them.
Do you have any interaction with the homeless shelter
Yes.
as far as providing services to some of those folks?
Yes.
Is that significant, or?
We love to work with Miranda. She is very helpful in trying to help our clients who are homeless make sure that they arrive and they come to court dates and they get to probation. Her and the volunteers and the staff there are excellent at just trying to remove any barriers. I mean, she's even called me personally, and we've talked clients off of ledges so they don't just run and get a warrant and get further down a rabbit hole. And we have reached out and had these conference calls with clients and referred them to their attorneys just to get them to understand, like, they're not going to be in trouble if they're coming and they're honest with us and they're working on these things. We're just going to send them to inpatient treatment, which, then frees up one more bed for Miranda while they're at, the rehab facility. And then oftentimes those facilities have reintegration services. And those are in other communities that have transitional and sober housing. I guess that is a barrier that we have, is transitional sober housing. We don't have a single Oxford house in this community. And I know someone at the Mental Health Advisory Council had brought that up. And I do think that's something that would be extremely helpful.
And that's where your faith-based groups could come in and help with that.
Absolutely. We discussed that at the pastor's breakfast.
Yeah.
It is a national practice that is proven to work. And if we could get landlords to meet with Friends of Recovery Association and the Kansas chapters for Oxford, I think that's a way to also keep money and maintaining properties that otherwise might be vacant. And so, but it would be vital for our clients if they had the opportunity to leave the shelter and not go home where their environment might still be full of drugs and alcohol or toxic, with those relationships at home, not just the environmental factors of having drugs and alcohol around, but if they were able to leave that network and move in with people who had similar values, who had required philanthropy and chapter meetings and were required to work or provide community service. And in those houses, they have their own internal measures where they're accountable for their sobriety. They do their own breathalyzers and urine tests just to prove to one another. It creates their own little social network of people who are also on the same path to recovery.
Thank you.
I got just one question I could, Madam Chair. I know we're going along with this. Years ago, I sat on the board for Wyandotte County's boys' home. Is all down by Sports Center. They had a house that they rented, and they kept 8 young men, juveniles from Wyandotte County, in there, and they had like a parent that oversaw them and had them go to school after they'd been released or going through a probation, or they'd go somewhere else besides going home. Is that offered? Is that model used anymore, or is that just gone away?
Yes, so Robert's Place, is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
So Robert's Place, I believe, is underneath the Wyandotte Center umbrella for PACES.
Okay.
And it is still utilized. Unfortunately, it's only for Wyandotte County youth, because when we see youth at juvenile intake, it would be so wonderful if we could accompany law enforcement to Robert's Place. But unfortunately, there aren't a lot of placement options, which is something we, have reached out to the community, and Commissioner Steben got us in front of some pastors to try to get volunteers who would be willing to take youth for a few days as emergency placement options. But we just don't have a lot of options here.
Right.
And we're taking Leavenworth youth who are in a vulnerable situation where they're needing to be removed from the home, and we're taking them out of this community, oftentimes to Andover in Wichita or out in western Kansas, which is re-traumatizing to them, disruptive to their education, where school is oftentimes the only safe place where they're getting, positive interactions, socializing, meals.
Right. Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Thanks for all you do. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, if we have nothing else for Jamie, thank you very much, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie.
Okay, now we are ready for planning and zoning.
Morning, John.
Quarterly report.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, how are you this morning?
Good, how are you?
Good. I'm going to briefly touch on our third quarter report, obviously through the end of September. Generally speaking, through that time frame, we've had 44 single-family homes, 108 accessory structures,
up until that point, and over 100 development cases through the end of September. You can see the comparative numbers from 2022 to 2023 on the last page of the report. We're trying to go through some policy elements to get some symmetry between procedure and existing policy, amending as we need to, or bring it to you for amendments as we need to again get a symmetrical process that's evenly enforced. Applications, we made a number of substantial changes on what we expect to see before those applications are accepted. On the building permit side, things like valuation components, which were non-existent before, are now being included in the applications, and it's viable information at the end of the year. We have a joint review committee that prior to 6 months ago was not an in-person committee. It was via Zoom or via phone call. Tried to put all those people in the same room during development application processes. Have been extremely helpful. Bill and his entire team and my team in the same room, as well as legal, to address most of the issues as early in the process as we possibly can. We anticipate that we're going to have a comprehensive plan update at the beginning of the year. Obviously, I'm down several positions, so we're trying to keep up with our current docket, which is it's heavy right now. So again, the anticipated time frame for that is the January, February time frame. We also anticipate, as I've said over the last 6 months, an annual review of development policy to give all bodies that are involved in that process an opportunity to take a look at a comprehensive level, what they like and what they don't like, and then modify that policy accordingly, anticipating that we would do that on an annual basis. Again, we will also have a joint meeting of the Planning Commission and BOCC around that same time frame to hash out and discuss a lot of those policy elements. Building Codes Appeals Board, obviously, we are responsible for the building codes that were adopted in 2020. Through that process, that board has forwarded a recommendation to the BOCC to adopt the 2012 codes. That's an extensive process, and again, we anticipate beginning that process around the first of the year. So we're acquiring the materials to accomplish that right now. We've joined the ICC to get the digital components that we'll need as part of that process. Development in general is, from a platting standpoint, is up. And by the end of the last quarter of the year, I think it will be substantially up from last year. Construction is slightly down, but there are some elements to that, and that's not just in Leavenworth County, that's across the board. Obviously, the interest rates and inflation are a big component of, spending those construction dollars up front. But we do see people gearing up to probably start that construction next year. At least in my experience, what I'm seeing today is an indicator that we will probably have a substantial increase in construction next year. And with that, I would answer any questions.
Your single-family homes, if you split the numbers of the 50, what percent of those would be in the southern part of the county?
I'd have to go back and take a look at those numbers. I didn't break them down in that fashion. Well, we have built a map with GIS that gives us an indicator of development and growth patterns, and while a good portion of them are south and west, there is a substantial number between the western edge of Lansing and the western edge of Basehor, actually between those two towns. So
there's a lot of growth there too.
There is,
yeah, well, you can see it
growth
when you're
there.
going down the road.
Yeah.
Any other questions for John? Go ahead.
John, you said something about on the building permit, adding evaluation to it.
It's a construction valuation. So typically when you turn in a building permit under a city that's adopted a code, there's a construction value that's associated with that permit request. At the end of the year, that gives you a valuation typically of your construction value of the elements that are permittable in your jurisdiction. So most jurisdictions track that on a monthly basis and an annual basis.
And who determines that?
Well, actually, the building official determines it, or the person turning in the application. Typically, you'll allow a market-ready valuation. The building permit is not based on that number.
Right, but I was just wondering who would come up with them.
At the end of the day, there is a construction valuation tablet or data table that the building official can utilize if there isn't a cost associated with the application. So let's say somebody comes in and they're building a 3,500 square foot home and they say this is a $50,000 home. Well, clearly that's not a reliable assessment. So the building official will come in and assess a square foot cost to that and give a construction valuation for that particular application. That in turn is tracked over months and then eventually on an annual basis.
I'm good.
I think that Mark sent us that one report that I think that we should kind of tout that Leavenworth County is doing well when it comes to.
That is a home builders, that's an HVA report,
Right.
and you'll notice in that report that construction values are a part of that report. Again, a lot of jurisdictions will use those numbers to assess a building permit fee on whatever work is being done, whether it's MEP work, whether it's typical construction, commercial, whatever it happens to be. The fee is associated with that valuation. That is not the case in Leavenworth County. These are flat fees here.
But again, the same thing I think Madam Chair is saying is that Leavenworth County is leading the way in a lot of areas, and has, in fact, even against the cities, they're doing quite well. So I know we need to go through and tweak everything. That's just part of the process. I'm all for that. But we're doing something right if we're seeing those kind of numbers come in.
Yeah, again, in the construction component, we haven't seen a cataclysmic fall like a lot of jurisdictions have over the period of this high interest rate and the exorbitant amount of inflation that we've seen. We've held pretty steady. We've done very well over that period of time.
So we've had some discussion in some of the plats and some of the rezonings that have come through about fire protection, what the requirements are for hydrants, because typically out in the county, it's a water spout. It's not a hydrant. It's not really capable of providing protection. You could fill up a tank with it slowly, but you could not protect a home typically with those because of the size of the water lines. What are you seeing as where that's headed?
Well, I think that's going to be a comment that we see from our fire chiefs and fire protection elements as we go through the planning process. Are there some solutions to that particular issue? Yeah, there are some, which certainly I think you guys will have that in front of you in the next year or so, and hopefully we have some buy-in from all of the stakeholders before we approach you with any definable solution. But yes, I think it's a repetitive comment. Is there a solution I can present to you today? No. And that comment will continue to happen as densities increase, which I think they will over the next 12 to 24 months. That will be something that you see before you a lot.
Well, typically in the past, we've never really made that a focus.
Well, I think there are reasons for that, and it depends on where you're at in the county and the interplay between rural water districts and the county itself. But again, there are a number of solutions to that problem that don't necessarily involve rural water districts. Although we prefer it if we can get it. There are options available, and again, I don't have those to present to you today, but I think you will see those in the near future.
The water district's perspective, this is kind of a chicken and an egg type thing. You need the development in order to be able to afford to invest in your infrastructure to make it where you have enough infrastructures to support water. But on the other side of it, we're saying we don't want it. We're not saying that. The fire districts are saying you shouldn't have that development without fire protection. Well, you can't. A water district can't justify spending that kind of money on infrastructure without the density. It just doesn't happen. So that's what John's saying. There's got to be kind of a break even point here.
And again, there are multiple answers to that particular question as it relates to code compliant ability to suppress fire. So some of those have to do with fire apparatus. Some of those have to do with draft ponds. There are a number of ways to accomplish it, but we want to work with all of our fire chiefs and emergency management before we approach anyone with any definable.
Right. So today isn't the day that we're going to answer that question.
Today is not the day we're going to answer that question. But yes, I do.
I think the question should be asked, though.
Well, the question, but I think the question has been asked, but today is not the day that we're going to get an answer.
I agree with that.
Question.
I'll take you back to the
late 90s, early 2000, when the county commissioners was collecting money for fire hydrants.
And I think that we need to
Legally, they had to give it all back with interest.
We need to keep in mind that, in the meantime, one of the most essential things is that we locate our emergency response places to where we can also respond to medical emergencies and things out in the county, which, is our
People
personnel.
live out
that
in
are-
the county
that,
shouldn't expect city services.
but just,
Again-
and that we need to encourage as much as we can development to happen as close to the cities and within the cities as possible, and then move inward or outward, however you want to look at it. So
from a staff standpoint,
Right.
we want everybody's buy-in and input at, again, the key stakeholders, everyone involved, before we present a solution.
Right.
Understood.
And that's,
Well,
and
and
that's the
typic-
responsible thing for us to do, is to have all of that before we.
But we do have some water districts and some other entities that I would say try to use the price of water meters or limitations on water to actually control development. And that's not their role.
Well, without getting into the elements of that, I can say again, there are multiple ways to address that particular issue. And again, those will be presented to you in the near future. I would anticipate that would be a component of the next code change when you see that. There should be a detail or two or three that each developer can accommodate to address these particular issues, and some of them may not have anything to do with the rural water district. So,
Right.
Again, without having that meeting with stakeholders, I can't answer your question today, but I
Right.
will be able to answer it in the near future.
No matter how you ask that question, Mike, we're on a little.
We're not going to answer that
All
question
right.
today.
John has to get that right out.
Okay, so let's move forward, because we're not answering that question today. It's kind of like, what part of it? No.
What would you do, Commissioner?
No, we're not
No,
going to
don't
have
get him
that.
started,
We're
Doug.
not going to, this is not on our agenda. We're not going to move into that direction. What we can do now.
We're just asking questions.
If you ask that question,
We
that
have
means
asked the question, the
got an
answer. And
So I'm afraid of
that's
that.
where we are now. So we will hear from
Or you've
planning
got a
and zoning on
problem to
these
the
issues
solution.
in the
Well,
future.
we'll move to another issue. Let's go on.
Okay,
Put
fine.
this fire out and move on.
Are there any other questions?
I don't have any.
Put the fire out.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it, and we'll do additional, we don't have any additional public comment, I don't believe, so we can do our
Round the horn.
round. Anybody have anything to share of what's happened in the past week? I'll start with you, Commissioner
Oh,
Smith.
I'm going to go to Baser tonight.
Good.
Meeting, and then Hills, the plant tour, that's on Monday, right? Okay. Hills Pet Food Plant Tour. That's it.
Commissioner Stevens?
Commissioner Smith and I attended the Kansas Economic Development Summit. Is that what it was called?
Conference,
44th
whatever,
Annual
yeah.
Summit. And really good information, really some good speakers. The gist is, although the entire United States economy has been kind of slow, Kansas economy is
Holding steady.
perking right along, and we have some bright spots, and we're going to have some spots in this area that are going to be things we're going to have to deal with.
Commissioner Culberson, you have
I don't have anything this week special.
at the city last night?
Leavenworth City meeting last night. They didn't really go over anything affecting the county.
I have just a couple things. Mike's exactly right. We had a couple of speakers that were really, really sharp. One of the things they talked about was salaries and how you either pay now or you end up losing and pay back. And I think we've been trying to stay ahead of that with our employees. But I really picked up on that when they were talking about that, Mike. I had the opportunity to judge some pumpkins at Platinum Automotive Annual Review. Had some good. We had some creative people in the county, let me tell you. Also had the opportunity to go to Officer or Detective Bill Lynn's retirement out in Lansing. He served with the Sheriff's Department for a number of years, and then he served with Lansing for a lot of years. A good retirement for him. They had out City Hall, and I presented him with a Leavenworth County coin. That's all I have.
I don't have anything, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. If you
Motion to
will.
adjourn.
Second.
Motion second. Aye.
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 Okay, we are adjourned.